I guess we got a little bit of a breaking news story this morning. You remember during the trucker convoy how the Canadian government said, you know what, we're going to freeze bank accounts, and we all thought that was Justin Trudeau or Chrystia Freeland. It turns out through an expose by someone online that wasn't them at all. It was actually Mark Carney's idea, who's our illegitimate prime minister right now, campaigning to be a legitimate prime minister right now. So yeah, that would be a real shame if this got seen by hundreds of thousands of people and went viral, but more on that later. We're going to be taking a look at what has happened in the campaign trail over the last 24 hours up to date, along with a couple of other things. So hope you stick around for the full video. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I want to encourage you guys to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And do us a favor and click and tap that little bell icon so you can actually be notified of upcoming videos. And before we get into it, I do have a message from today's sponsor. Whenever I hear about tariffs or this trade war, all that I can think about is how this is hurting the Canadian and the American economy, but specifically Canadian and American citizens. And so there's a lot of noise around this from the left and from the right, which is why I've narrowed it down to one place where I can actually find the truth. And that's ground.news. They're an app and website that I have partnered with because they are committed to bringing you the truth. Go to ground.news/sun to see for yourself how this works. Here's a story about Canada retaliating with 25% tariffs on billions of dollars worth of U.S. goods. Over 150 sources from around the world are reporting on the story, and Ground News gives me a quick summary based on all the articles. Looking at the bias distribution bar, we can see that coverage is pretty evenly split across the political spectrum, with coverage coming from both the right and left-leaning outlets. The Toronto Star highlights Trudeau calling tariffs a very dumb move, while Premier Doug Ford orders American alcohol off store shelves in Ontario, framing the response as strong political pushback. Seeing these perspectives side by side on Ground News makes it how clear different outlets shape the narrative, helping you cut through the spin and get the full picture. The difference in coverage makes clear that the left and the right are approaching this from different perspectives, which is exactly why Ground News developed a blind spot feed. It shows you stories that are disproportionately reported by either the left or the right. I find it really helpful for gaining a balanced perspective in our hyper-polarized world. I really think that Ground News is providing the solution that we desperately need. So go to ground.news/sun, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code and send this to somebody who needs it, because if you subscribe through my link, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan today. And that's the same plan that I use to get unlimited access. That's ground.news/sun. Thank you, Ground News, for sponsoring today's video. So in case you've missed what's happened in the past 12 or so hours, here's a rough 2-minute shotgun update. Here we go.
President Trump and I...
In front of containers of goods at risk in a trade war, Prime Minister Mark Carney told reporters his first call with President Donald Trump was respectful.
The president respected Canada's sovereignty today, both in his private and public comments. The spirit of the call was both cordial and focused on making progress.
You know, I've always loved Canada, and we had a very good conversation with the Prime Minister. They've got an election going on, so we're going to meet after the election.
The tone was very different than how the president treated Carney's predecessor.
I call him Governor Trudeau.
Still, this call occurred 2 weeks after Carney was sworn in and 1 day after Trump imposed 25% tariffs on autos, adding to the duties he already imposed on steel and aluminum.
The president did not indicate pulling back on the tariffs.
Instead, more levies are expected on April 2nd when the White House rolls out worldwide reciprocal tariffs. A readout of the call stated that the Prime Minister informed the President that the government would respond by implementing retaliatory tariffs, but Carney was reluctant to say it out loud. You were clear to the President that you are going to retaliate, and what was his reaction?
You've seen my statement. I'll leave it at that.
The Conservative leader who wants Carney's job also tempered his tone.
I was glad to learn that the President and Prime Minister spoke today, and like all Canadians, I hope they had a successful talk.
Canada has already struck back with counter tariffs on $60 billion of U.S. goods. After his call with Trump, Carney briefed provincial leaders on what further action could be taken.
I urged the Prime Minister
I hate this communist.
to work with our allies around the world. The president is attacking countries everywhere right now.
This douche right here is using emergency powers during this trade war. He literally gave himself emergency powers to the year 2027.
Now.
But Carney did say the two leaders agreed on the need to start comprehensive negotiations on a new economic and security relationship between the two countries. For Canada, that means a relationship less reliant on the United States.
But that's all talk because President Trump has still said that tariffs are coming on April 2nd. So we're just going to have to wait and see how this does play out. Now, I know yesterday I said, hold me accountable if I ever show you the polls. We're not going to look at the polls. We're not going to look at the polls at all. I don't want anyone to look at the polls. The only polls that matter are when you actually go and vote. But I'm going to do that exact same thing again. Don't look at the polls, folks. Don't look at the polls because it doesn't make any sense. It's showing that Carney's getting 190 projected seats, a sweeping majority. All provinces and territories, according to the polls, are showing that they're liberal, except for Alberta and Saskatchewan, which have a very clear conservative majority. Just don't look at this. 89% likely of a majority and 99% likely of winning the most seats. Folks, this doesn't make any sense at all. None whatsoever. Don't look at the polls. The only thing that you should be paying attention at is making sure that you encourage all your friends and family to get out and vote. And we really, really, really need to do what's in the best interest of Canada. And speaking of Canada, you've got the Vice President, J.D. Vance, who has this to say about Canada. It's not very good.
The tariffs. There's been some retaliation, some signals at least in the media that Canada's going to respond. Some of these others are going to respond to the president's tariffs. What's your message for Americans that are going to see costs increase on auto manufacturing, new cars, that kind of thing? Is it Buy America, or what's the message going forward there?
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, for the Canadians, and we have many dear friends in Canada, and of course we love the Canadian people, but the Canadian leadership threatening retaliatory tariffs against the United States, as President Trump often says, they just don't have the cards. There is no way that Canada can win a trade war with the United States. What President Trump has said is that he wants to level the playing field.
Yeah, well, we know how that works when America says you don't have the playing cards, and I, for one, don't want our leaders to get Zelensky'd out of the Oval Office. You'll respect us. That was completely embarrassing, and I hope that that never happens to a Canadian leader. Other than Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney, they probably deserve it. And speaking of deserving it, we've got Jagmeet Singh, who deserves nothing in this election, yet somehow he thinks that he is actually going to be Canada's next prime minister. Talk about delusional.
But I'm wondering if you could today tell us what success looks like politically in your campaign. I know you're probably going to give me a policy answer, but I'm really looking for what does success look like for you politically? Are you still running to be prime minister?
Absolutely. I want folks to know they've got a real choice in this election. That if you want someone that's going to fight for you, that's us. If you want someone that's going to take on corporate greed in the grocery stores, take on corporate landlords, that's us. If you want someone that's got a real plan to make life more affordable, that's New Democrats. And I've shown you what we can do when we are fighting for you in Ottawa. We deliver dental care, pharmacare, protections for workers, real changes in your lives. Imagine what could happen if you elect more of us. I want folks to have someone fighting for them. I want the folks of Ottawa Centre to have Joel Harden fighting for them. I know that you are going to be better off, you're going to be better served if a New Democrat is fighting for you. So I'm running to become prime minister because I want a prime minister that actually fights for working class folks, that fights for everyday families, that fights for the middle class every single day in office. And that's going to be me and my team.
It's not going to work though, Jagmeet, because you need seats, you need popularity, and he has neither, which is why he's going to find himself with likely less than 5 or 6 seats. That's a huge cut from his 20 plus seats that he has right now. But that's not the only thing he had to say earlier this morning. Jagmeet Singh also said this.
That people are dealing with high food prices because corporate grocery stores are ripping you up and We know that people are struggling with the high cost of groceries because corporate grocery stores are ripping you off and driving up the cost of food. And so today I'm announcing our plan that we would impose an emergency cap on food prices to stop them from ripping you off. We want to fight back and defend Canadians. Canadians believe in taking care of each other, having each other's backs. New Democrats have your back. We know that these corporate grocery stores have ripped us off. They've jacked up the price of bread. They also most recently were found jacking up the price of meat, using the weight of the packaging in addition to the weight of the meat, which is wrong. And they've been doing that systemically. So we know they've been ripping us off and we have to fight back. That people are dealing with high.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty gross if that is what's happening, using the packaging of meat to scale in and factor how much actual meat you're buying. It's very disgusting. And I'd love to know your guys' thoughts down below. Look, I don't agree with a lot of what Jagmeet says, but on that particular point, that seems extremely disingenuous. And I think that that should be addressed regardless of who is in power. And then you have illegitimate Prime Minister Carney, who has this insane amount of security, more than Justin Trudeau. More than Justin Trudeau. I didn't think that was possible. But here, let's take a look. So the vehicles are the same, but it's like the personal bodyguard when he gets out that is super weird. Looking around as if there's a threat. Two guys, and then he gets escorted in.
What's your message to Canadian auto workers this morning?
I gave my message yesterday. There'll be more after the meeting.
That's a lot of security, man. That's even more than Justin Trudeau, and he was like the most hated man in Canada. And I just don't understand. Is it a show of display? Is he actually undergoing threats? Canadians are peaceful, and we don't do attacks on our leaders. In it's just not something that we do. But hey, who knows what happens, right? Then you've got Mark Carney here that also pledges $5 billion in trade infrastructure to diversify the economy. I mean, I agree with the top comment here. That doesn't go very far in Canada. And I can't believe that this guy has already pledged like $50 billion, man. He's giving away so much money. Liberal leader Mark Carney says he wants to reform the CBC and Radio Canada to ensure the public broadcaster is viable. So on one end, you have Pierre Poilievre wants to get rid of the CBC, defund them. And on the other end, you have Mark Carney, who wants to put more money into the CBC and make sure that they prosper and grow and become even bigger of a propaganda machine monopoly. Yeah, I don't think that most Canadians would want that, but that's my opinion. Let me know your guys' down below. And then you saw a little hint of this in the intro video, but you got Pierre Poilievre, who is meeting with the Nanaimo conservative candidate right here. Tamara, I believe her name is, and with his wife, obviously. And they're walking over to meet some workers. I believe sawmill workers. People really only seem excited to meet Pierre. You don't really see people smiling and shaking hands with Mark Carney. That just doesn't really seem to happen. There's Canada's next prime minister, ladies and gentlemen. Totally freaking awesome. I hope one day that I also get to meet Pierre. And then since we are talking about Pierre, we got to talk about the media attacks that are geared towards our next prime minister. Specifically, the Toronto Star is reporting that Pierre holds investments in Brookfield, the same company that he attacks Mark Carney over. Now, that is true, but it's disingenuous. What Pierre does is he holds a Vanguard TSX ETF. An ETF is basically just an entire portfolio under one investment. So it holds, in this case, 187 companies, the largest companies in Canada, right? So it's not Pierre investing in Brookfields. He's investing in an ETF, and they just happen to hold Brookfield stock. But of course, you're going to have the Toronto Star, the propaganda machine for the Liberals, try to push that message out there that he's being hypocritical. And the expense ratio is 0.05 MER, which is insanely low, even for Vanguard funds. So again, I mean, it's just super disingenuous of the media to say that he's investing directly in Brookfield. He's investing in an ETF. He has no control over the ETF funds. And in fact, that ETF is like a very Canadian ETF. So I'm going to leave that up to you guys to decide on whether Pierre is or is not investing in Brookfield. But now we got to take a look at the Emergencies Act during the Freedom Convoy. For that, to refresh our minds, let's revisit this press conference.
To know that some of these crowdfunding sites, such as GoFundMe, are going to have to register with FinTrack, which is the government's financial intelligence unit. We're going to play a little bit more now. This is what we've heard from Chrystia Freeland about these measures.
If your truck is being used in these protests, your corporate accounts will be frozen. The insurance on your vehicle will be suspended. The consequences are real, and they will bite. It is time for you to go home. And let me also be clear that we will have zero tolerance for the establishment of new blockades or occupations.
Okay, so that was probably bringing back a lot of negative memories for a lot of viewers. But the reason we're taking a look at that is, well, it wasn't Freeland or even Mark Carney's decision to freeze bank accounts. According to ex-user Mario, who's also on other platforms like TikTok and YouTube, I believe, he says, "Holy crap, I can't believe I found this. Freezing the bank accounts of protesters following the money, it was all Mark Carney's idea. He wrote an opinion piece in 2022 with the full blueprint in the Globe and Mail, and it's going viral on X." So let's take a look.
I'm going to blow your mind. Give me 2 seconds. Do you remember when the Emergencies Act was enacted on the protesters and it was deemed unconstitutional and unreasonable? Take a wild guess whose idea this was. Mark Carney, published February 7th, 2022. It's time to end the sedition in Ottawa by enforcing the law and following the money. Those who are occupying the downtown of our country's capital, they are not patriots. This is not about restoring freedom, but the beginning of anarchy. It's not a rush of blood to the head. It's deliberate and calculated, and because of that, they must know that from now on, there will be consequences for their actions. Wow. Those who are still helping to extend this occupation must be identified and punished to the full force of the law. Drawing the line means choking off the money that finances occupation. But by now, anyone sending money to the convoy should be in no doubt you are funding sedition. Foreign funders of an insurrection interfered in our domestic affairs from the start. Canadian authorities should take every step within the law to identify and thoroughly punish them. The involvement of foreign governments and any officials connected to them should be identified, exposed, and addressed. I know from experience that crises don't end by themselves. This is insane. How has no one talked about this?
Yeah, we all thought that it was Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, and then we thought it was like Marco Mendicino who invoked the Emergencies Act, but I don't think anyone has ever brought to light the fact that it was Mark Carney who literally laid this out. I mean, that's insane. Good on him for finding this.
Is our prime minister right now. It was his idea. He was advising the Liberal government, and he's been an advisor to Trudeau for a very long time. You see it there for yourself. He advised for this. It was deemed unreasonable and it violated the Charter of Rights. And they want to appeal the decision. They are appealing the decision. This is who people want for their prime minister. This is insane.
Yeah, obviously that we can't have that, man. This guy is just so corrupt. From the World Economic Forum, he's been advising Justin Trudeau and the Liberals in the shadows for years. And now we know that he's the reason why people had their bank accounts frozen. I mean, at what point is it too far? In my opinion, it's already been way too far. He's not Canada's real prime minister. I understand it's a gray area. Yes, he's been sworn in, but I still view him as an illegitimate prime minister because there's a 1/4 of this YouTube channel subscriber count is what decided him being prime minister. That's absurd. My House of Canada YouTube channel has 127,000 subscribers. That's the exact amount of people that apparently voted in the Liberal election for the leadership race. So you're telling me that my entire subscriber base from House of Canada could have been the deciding factor on Canada's interim prime minister? That doesn't make any sense. I understand it's a loophole. It doesn't have to be just because it's legal doesn't have to mean that it makes sense. It's disgusting. And this guy has proven time and time again that he is corrupt, that he's going to abuse power, that we don't know what the limit is. We don't know what his capabilities are for the ceiling. I, for one, don't want to find out. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and one last thank you to Ground News for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.